Welcome back. You're still watching Kenya's Choice on this 16th day of August 2022. It's just 3 minutes past the hour. And Kakai Kissinger, you wanted to say something about the place of the contest by the 4 commissioners and reading that against what the Constitution provides and also what Irungu is quoting from the law.
I wanted to build up actually from that. Is that the beauty about this country is that we litigate. And we go into forums that help us to understand what the law is, because the judiciary and judges are there to interpret the law. Now, on the issue of quorum that my brother talked about, and which is going to play out if the petition is filed, we need to remember that this issue of quorum has been decided before at the highest court. Remember when the issues of BBI came up, and there were challenges as to the issue of quorum. It was highly contested and litigated. And at the time, when that issue of quorum was being litigated, there were only 3 commissioners in office. Wafula Chebukati, Professor Gulie, and the other third commission. These 4 commissioners who yesterday distanced themselves from the result for their own reasons, we don't know the reasons, but they will tell the Kenyans the reasons, were not there. So at the time, the contestation on quorum, the decision was that as it was, the commission was assembled and could carry out the mandate and the function of the commission. So the issues that will play out will be very interesting for Kenyans to watch. But we have to take Kenyans back to what the Supreme Court in 2017 decided on matters of these forms. We've been hearing from 34A, from 34B, from 34C, and eventually from 34D. The center of contestation should only be on Form 34A. Because what the court said, that Form 34A, you cannot alter. The chairman cannot even change anything. They can only note the mistake that comes out of it during the tallying. So it will be interesting, was this opaqueness, therefore, in relation to Form 34A? And if it was, they will then be able to prove and show us where it went wrong in terms of Form 34A. Did the Form 34A or did Chebukati and his team comply with those 4 principles that were established? The election must be simple, it must be transparent, it must be accurate, and it must be verifiable. Were those captured? Is the opaqueness that the Vice Chair is talking about touching on those 4 principles? We have to remember that courts always operate on what we call judicial precedents. They will not depart from their reasoning from the 2017 decision. So if the petition is filed, it will be a very narrow petition, particularizing specific aspects of the law that require to be interpreted.
And in your view, if at all the claims continue, what effect does pre-election disagreements have on the vote, so that if that opaqueness speaks to probably decisions on procurement or how policy decisions are made before the election, would they have a place and an impact on the outcome of the vote of 9th of August? Kakai.
And it takes us back to the argument that an election is because we're talking about issues of procurement. We said an election is, and I think decisions have come out clearly that an election is a process. It's not an event. So yesterday was just an event, one day out of the many processes. So one has to trace the last 5 years, because this election result is based out of an electoral cycle that has taken place for the last 5 years. And there are many other categories in there that have to be looked at. But according to what they were saying, if I was to go by what the commissioners were talking about, they were not talking about the entire 5 years. They were talking about the last few days. So it means, going by what she said, that there was no opaqueness in the last 5 years. The opaqueness only came in the last few days. So she will have to unpack and see whether those few days what really took place. But I think when, whatever the petition, because we are discussing something, we don't know what it is. We're just giving ideas, and here we don't know what really credibility evidence they have. But whatever it is, there's a legal framework in which one then has to unpack that opaqueness.
Okay, all right. Of course, we still don't know so much about that opaqueness, and it's, I believe, the responsibility of the claimants to make excuse me, to make it clear. We want to speak to Carol Kariuki from Kenya Private Sector Alliance. If you can hear me, Carol, good morning. And what's your first reaction to the judgment, the reality that now we are in, President-elect William Ruto, the Azimio la Umoja team protesting at the election outcome?
Thank you very, very much. Good morning, everyone. I think for us, we are focused on Kenyans and really thanking Kenyans for the peaceful season we've had of electioneering. It's, as we have said before, it's been very calm, and that has been very good for the economy and for business. We know yesterday's turn of events, we're still observing, and we'll be hoping that the legal process and what we've been saying before through Kenya Daima initiative is that any aggrieved parties will resort to the legal alternative and not chaos, because really we do not want to get Kenyans involved beyond this, because Kenyans already exercise their rights. So we'll be looking forward to see what the next steps will be, but hopefully that we'll exhaust all our legal channels and not result into chaos as a country. We've done very well as a country. We've really proved that our democracy is growing and is vibrant. We know we still have a long way to go, but we really want to thank the Kenyans, and really what we are asking them from KEPSA perspective, from the Kenya Daima perspective, is that we go back to work, we go back to economic activities, and we allow the law to take its course. And really that's where we are in concerning yesterday.
I know you're keen on at least the country getting back to what we used to do before the election, but are you concerned about the split that has affected the IEBC again? We were here in 2017, just before the repeat election. One commissioner left. The repeat election was conducted anyway. Then a few months later, just about 5 months later, we saw three commissioners resign from the institution, and now we are finding ourselves in a situation where there's a serious split, 4 versus 3. Are you concerned?
It's concerning about our electoral body. We hope that as our democracy is maturing, as our institutions are getting stronger, that would stop seeing this happening in the electoral body, and really hope the issues can be resolved and resolved early. And so it is truly, it is a concern, but we hope it's not something that will affect how the process goes forward. I know we did that in 2017, but the process did come to an end. And so we do really hope, even with this, that the process will come to an end, despite what we did witness yesterday. We actually would not like to see the country go into chaos. And so we hope the commissioners will find a way to resolve whatever the challenges are, and then we can have a duly elected president going forward.
Okay, and I would want us now to listen to what exactly those 4 commissioners said through Juliana Cherera, the vice chair, before we can move on to other matters of this discussion. Listen.
As you can see, we are part of the commissioners in the IEBC. We have conducted the 2022 general election, and we have ensured that we have improved the standards, and we have ensured that we have consistently communicated what is happening. We have partnered with all stakeholders, and we'll say it for a fact that as the Commission, we have done a good job. But some things need to be put out there. As you can see, the 4 of us, we are here, not at Bomas of Kenya, where the result is going to be announced, because of the opaque nature of how this phase has been handled. We therefore cannot take ownership on the results that is going to be announced. However, we have an open door that people can go to court. And because of the same, we urge Kenyans to be peaceful, because the rule of the law is going to prevail. Thank you.
All right. That is Juliana Cherera, the Vice Chair of the IEBC. And Wambui, because you sit in commissions, how do we shield these institutions from what would appear to be political interference moving forward? Because there's been allegations throughout in this election campaign that one side feels the commission is not neutral. The other side defends the commission and says, don't attack the commission, deal with the voters. Now, such a statement has come. What are you reading?
Yeah, I think it's a very unfortunate situation for a commission to find itself in such a manner, because what is encouraged is that the commission decisions, board decisions, be unanimous decisions. Voting is highly discouraged in such settings, because voting sort of kind of divides people. But when people unanimously make a decision, it is considered as the best way forward. It's a tough thing balancing between your appointing authority and, working for Kenyans. Mm-hmm. And what I would encourage is that people look at what is your constitutional mandate. What is your mandate according to the law? What does the law require you to do? Yeah? And focus more on that, because once you're appointed in office, you must not carry that baggage along with you. You must work for Kenyans. You must do your duties in accordance with the law, with the act that governs your institution, or according to the constitution for those, organizations or institutions that are directly appointed from the constitutional mandate. And probably there's something somewhere missing out on what the chairman, Wafula Chebukati, spoke about when he was declaring the results. Mm-hmm. He said 2 of his commissioners were already injured. I was also personally there at Bomas of Kenya, mm-hmm. and I witnessed the violence that was taking place. Wafula Chebukati himself was also assaulted. Other people were also assaulted, and there was, this sort of chaos ongoing. And probably we would want to know where or who specifically assaulted these particular commissioners, and also for the missing, returning officers, the other officials at IEBC, what exactly happened to them. Kenya, at this point in time, has really matured in terms of its democracy, in terms of its respect for the rule of law, in terms of its respect for even institutions and their independence. Mm-hmm. The interference that we see is just a small resistance by a small group of people who have not yet come to terms with the independence of such institutions like NCIC, like IEBC, most of these commissions that should and must remain independent. We also look at the courts, and we find that, for example, the decision by the former Chief Justice, Mr. Maraga, last time, it was not expected by anyone. And at that point in time, people realized that we now must get used to separating the roles of the judiciary with the roles of the executive. Mm-hmm. And we must respect these 2 very important arms of government. Right. But we must also allow them to work independent of each other. Okay. So that whoever is aggrieved by the executive can go and seek redress from the judiciary. Okay. Yeah.
Let's listen to Wafula Chebukati as he spoke about what he has been doing at the commission yesterday.
We have walked the journey of ensuring that Kenyans get a free, fair, and credible election. It's not been an easy journey. Right now, 2 of my commissioners and the CEO are injured. And of course, they are being treated. We have staff who have been profiled. There's a staff returning officer in Embakasi West who disappeared while on duty. We have staff who have been arbitrarily arrested for no reasons. We don't know where they are. Some from this National Tallying Center. But we have a constitutional duty to perform. And that's why I stand before you today, despite intimidation, harassment, I took an oath of office to serve this country. And I've done my duty in accordance with the Constitution and the laws of the land. And I feel proud that I've been given this opportunity to serve Kenyans. This, of course, will be my last election to preside over. And for those who will come, we have prepared for you what the Constitution envisaged from us, an independent electoral commission.
All right. Irungu, listening to the chairman, of course, he says a lot of things, albeit so softly. Harassment, intimidation, some officers who've been arrested from the National Tallying Center, he says he doesn't know where they are. Of course, there's a returning officer from Embakasi East that is still missing. Investigations are continuing. What, in your view, could be causing this? Because people look around. If you look at the scenes at the Bomas of Kenya, and Wambui was there, it was politicians sort of trying to fight the process. So who is interfering with such an institution to the extent that you can see a split in the commission?
I think on this issue of the independent offices and constitutional commissions, we need to step back a little bit and look at the last 10 years. As Amnesty, we did a scorecard of the Jubilee administration, which we published a month or so before the elections. I can hear the anthem in the background. I am duty-bound to stop and wait for it to complete. So that we saw a process in which a number of constitutional commissions and independent offices were deliberately underfunded. They were deliberately starved of commissioners or office bearers. There was either delays in employment or they were, headhunting, to be honest, that ended up securing offices to these commissions. So the challenge of creating independent bodies as envisaged in our Constitution, has not played out in many cases. And I think this is one of the major concerns that we have. Now, all eyes, I think, will be on the Kenya Kwanza coalition because it was in their manifesto. They spoke about shielding and protecting independent offices from presidential abuse and influence. And I think we need to hold them to that commitment, not just in this moment, but I think in the months and the years to come, should they assume office, fairly soon. I think the other thing to mention on this is, when you have a commissioners split in a very tense moment like this, we have to ensure that everybody, all of the commissioners, regardless of those that were for the announcement yesterday and those that were against the announcement, that they all receive police protection at a time like this, not just themselves, but their families. And the National Police Service must do that regardless of the political interests that are heightened at this moment. The second thing, I think, is also we need to hear from the Transitional Government Committee that was set up, because I think this is a moment in which the nation is a little bit confused about what does this mean, and a statement today would essentially allay some of the anxiety. We need to avoid any further tension and violence, particularly around the Electoral Commission, which is playing out not just in our borders, but I think internationally as well. We have to avoid really the potential for international ridicule and criticism that we are unable to manage this last leg of the elections well. So I think, for me, these are the concerns that we would want to indicate at this time. We must protect all the commissioners, regardless of where they sit on this decision.
Okay, and Kakai, I'll get to you, but first let's listen to Carol Kariuki. And you spoke about the essence of moving on after this general election. But how do you suggest we manage the politics of this country? Because after the 2017, we saw the sort of management that went into it. That was also very divisive. I'm talking about the handshake of March 2018 that has actually brought us to where we are. So how do we manage, even as we look at the state of the economy, how do we manage the politics so that it doesn't just unite us, but also doesn't divide us?
I think because we've been here before as a country, so we know how to move forward for the sake of the economy. So I think what we should be looking at is that we focus on the economy. We focus on building this country. It's our country. We're not going to have people build it for us. When we visit other countries and we see how they have built their countries over the years, it's people who built those countries, so we can build our own country. And so we may have hiccups here and there, and many countries have faced the same over time. Maybe when we read history, we find that many of the old countries did have hiccups along the way, but they kept forging forward. And I think that's what will really be important for us as a country, to really keep forging forward, even when we face hiccups, and not decide to stop or think we can resolve any issues by going into chaos or into war, but it's to keep forging forward, to keep rebuilding, to keep learning from past lessons and building from those mistakes and making it better with time, so that history will be kind to us. I don't think there's any country that can say got it right from the first time or the first go. They've had to grow with time. And even old democracies have gone back and forth. I think we all saw what happened to the US, what we call their famous January 6th last year, and they've not resolved those issues. But yet, because they had already built a strong foundation, the country is still able to keep moving forward, even as they resolve those kind of issues. So those will come, and we'll find ourselves sometimes here where we are, like yesterday, but we have to keep forging forward and ensuring that we continue to strengthen our foundation, so that when there's a shake-up, the economy is not shaken up that much. Right now, I think we are all concerned because of the economy. It's a very delicate economy, not because so much of the elections. Of course, with the election, we always have the economy slows down, but we've had challenges. We've had COVID, we've had drought, the worst in 40 years. We've had the Ukraine-Russia war, and we didn't realize for a long time how much that affects our fertilizers, our wheat, our fuel. But we've seen that all those affect our economy. So there's the global challenges that are happening, the climate change and all. But there's also our own local issues as a growing economy and growing democracy. And so we have to manage both of them very delicately, so we keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Kakai, we listened to Deputy President, well, should I say President-elect William Ruto, speaking about how to move forward. And he's very clear that he's not interested in a similar process like what happened in 2018 of the handshake. For him, he believes it is best for the opposition, in this case, the minority party, to play its role, and then for those in the executive to do their job. How do we manage the expectations of the citizenry, especially in these political issues?
Thanks for that question. You know, one of the basic things that we all understand, which has been safeguarded and guaranteed by the Constitution in this country, is democracy. And my basic understanding, and anyone's basic understanding of democracy, is that democracy allows people to question the leaders, people to challenge the leaders. We must be able to say that this is working for us and it's not working for us. So hearing his speech, I think he's saying that he doesn't want to work with the persons who came second and who lost according to the results that were announced yesterday on matters of running the executive in a kind of a handshake phenomenon or scenario. But he's willing to work with them in terms of them providing oversight and criticizing what his government under the executive is doing. When you look at democracies, we all like, and Yuton will agree with me, that we like quoting the Americans as the most democratic countries probably one can think of. And on this one, I'll agree with them that when it comes to issues of democracy in the U.S., you'll see the Republicans are in office. Once they're out, they're out. When the Democrats come in, they come in, and that is it. Because the role of the opposition is actually to check the executive and to check the balance. But now, the challenge that we have in this country is that, I don't know, Yuton, when the last time we had opposition in this country, or when we ran a government that has opposition. It's been a while, maybe the last 10 to 15 years, right? We have not had a very strong opposition because of the issue of a handshake that has been taking place. And you remember under the Kibaki regime, the 2007-2008 elections, which most people don't like talking about it anymore because we know what happened. Then came in the Nusumkate government, and after that we have had this handshake and so forth. And the whole idea is that our nature of competition is so close, so close that half of the country feels left out. And the only way to do is to include them in terms of running the affairs and the economy of the country. So we still have a challenge with what we call inclusivity in this country, where people feel they're completely excluded. But anyway, it is his call. If he's going to talk about the mandate of the government, the executive, he's saying he doesn't want to work under coalition, but will prefer having a strong opposition, which is something that we want to see how it will work.
Okay, let's listen to him. That is the President-elect William Ruto, as he spoke about this yesterday.
I want to thank my worthy competitor, the Honorable Raila Odinga, for a campaign that we all dwelled on issues and we tried to sell an agenda to the people of Kenya. I want to promise that I will work with all elected leaders and all leaders in Kenya so that we can fashion a country that leaves nobody behind. What the people of Kenya have done, they have assigned us responsibilities.
All right, of course, talking about responsibilities for him in the executive, for the runners-up on the other side. So again, Irungu, how do we manage this? Because like he says, we haven't exactly gotten it right. There was a bit of opposition between 2013 and 2017, but after 2017, you haven't felt that. So how do you ensure that, yes, there is a winner in State House, but the other party remains active, not just to oversight within Parliament, but also to speak about issues of the country out here, just like they have on the campaign trail?
Yeah. So I think we have to go back to our history a little bit. In 1991, we declared that we did not want a one-party state. This was enshrined by the Constitution, and therefore the idea that our political class should all be in one political formation is something that is really not in the democracy. Look at a couple of things. I think the first one is to, first of all, recognize that the mandate, if the Supreme Court does not overturn the announcement yesterday, the mandate that has been given to President-elect William Ruto is essentially a very slim mandate. It's 30% of the electorate. I mean, I was doing the maths yesterday, and I've done this before, and I have not been challenged, so let me allow it. I'm going to do it again in case somebody has better figures out there, and I'm watching Twitter very carefully. Over 4 million people did not register to vote, but were eligible. 8 million, just under 8 million, basically did not come out on polling day. 7 million, if we take the announcement that was made yesterday, voted for Raila Odinga. That's about 18 to 19 million people. who did not vote for the president-elect. Now, what this means is that there is a large constituency that he needs to win over and his party needs to win over. I don't think the way to do that is to create a handshake among political elites. I think the way to do that is to essentially transform the conditions that most people are concerned about. We are concerned about rising food and fuel prices. We are concerned about the defaulting state. We are concerned about an economy that seems to be weak in the face of the cost of inflation. We're worried about the 4.6 million people who are starving. We're worried about, anyway, I could go on. I think the way that Kenya Kwanza can win over rather, let me put it in the politician's language. I think the handshake that's required in this country right now is for the Kenya Kwanza government to essentially establish universal healthcare, to focus on education and expanding the reach of social services to Kenyans, particularly social protection. There were many I guess, ideas that were in the political manifesto that now need to be delivered. And I was glad to hear that President-elect say yesterday that they have a plan that in the next 100 days, the next 1 year, the next 2 years, this would come to being. That is the handshake that is needed. It's not a handshake with his rivals. It's a handshake with the population of 47 million Kenyans. And I think that's the challenge that we must keep ahead of Kenya Kwanza at this time. I think the other element, of course, is that, you know, we do need to see in what the British would call a loyal opposition. Loyal opposition doesn't mean that you agree with the executive or the national government. What it means is that you hold them accountable for the policies and the way that they spend the budgets and taxes that are generated by the people of this country. So I think that's the focus now of those who will not be governing us for the next 5 years. The third area really is party strengthening. I think part of the challenge we've got is that our parties are special purpose vehicles for elections. They wake up just before the elections, they reorganize themselves, and then they go to sleep for the next 5 years. And I think we have to call on party leaders, the secretary generals, to really use the funding that they're now receiving from taxpayers to be able to consolidate their ideologies, to consolidate their structures, to create a membership base that is loyal and is able to essentially push the party values even when they're not in power. So I think these 4 areas really are the focus for the next 5 years for us.
Very interesting. They just said that parties go to sleep after an election.
I call it actually post-election sleep syndrome. It's even got an acronym. Post-election sleep syndrome. And unfortunately, citizens do that as well. We wake up very early to vote. We spend a couple of hours in the queues. We vote in 5 minutes, and then we go back to sleep for 5 years. We can't allow that to happen. Too much is at stake now. We need active citizens.
Okay, all right. I'll get to you, Wambui. But Carol, again, so yes, we've seen the 12th Parliament doing its job, but largely agreeing with the government, yet it's supposed to be the oversight house. Some of the decisions they've made have actually affected the business climate in the country, including some of the decisions on taxation. Remember the question of minimum tax that had to go to the courts for it to be overturned. So what would you want to see in the 13th Parliament that is supposed to be oversighting the government, yet we know that numbers could be in the favor of Kenya Kwanza, especially if you had to look at the Senate? What must they do now? Carol, can you hear me?
I can't hear you clearly. I'm struggling to hear you. I was hearing you so clearly, but now I'm not hearing you.
Okay, let's try again. I'm asking the question about what Parliament's role should be, because in the past 5 years, we've seen the 12th Parliament sort of, even people have claimed that it was just rubber stamping what the executive presented before them. And you have had situations, for instance, the introduction of the minimum tax, despite some bit of opposition, it had to go to the courts for it to be overturned. So what is it that we must see in the 13th Parliament, even as they work with the Kenya Kwanza government once they come into office? Well, unfortunately...
let me hope I'm hearing you correctly. I'm trying to... I've switched off the the camera just to try and hear.
Okay.
When it's about looking forward and the issue of taxation, I'm assuming that's what you're asking. And I think for us, what we're looking forward to is an enabling business environment. We've had issues with some of the taxes and the amount of taxes collected, not from everyone. So our argument has been that everyone should be included in the tax bracket. So really ensuring that taxation is not only from a few people, because then we will not be able to grow this economy. The demands are more, and we really need a lot more to be able to build a country. So what we'll be looking forward to the next government is really looking to a new tax policy, which we had already started working with the outgoing administration, and that is also reviewed every 5 years to really take into consideration the changes of the environment, what's changing, how the economy is growing. So we look forward to really finalizing that work of a new tax policy, a new and better enabling environment when it comes to taxes, looking at the raw materials. We have to become a producing country if we're going to create jobs. The more we import, the more we also import we export our jobs away to other countries. And so if we can really look at reducing the taxes on the raw materials.
Okay, it appears that you have a challenge. Sorry, Carol, we can't hear you. We'll allow you to try reconnect. Okay, we'll allow Carol to reconnect so that we can get her clearly. But Wambui, if you may want to go on that, what do we do to the 13th Parliament so that it plays its practical role, which is to oversight? And William Ruto was speaking about it yesterday. Yet, in the current administration, the Jubilee administration, you've seen Parliament sort of just rubber stamping what the executive presents, despite making note.
Yeah, I think it speaks more of what we were speaking earlier on the independence of the different institutions that we have. And just an observation that the Azimio Coalition now has 3 members above the Kenya Kwanza team. But does that mean that the 3 members cannot work for the country, probably support the executive to
What's your tally?
Push?
What's your tally for Azimio, the total one?
I think it was it 167?
Is it 160? I thought it was 162, according to The Nation yesterday. 162.
Against 158.
59.
159.
159.
Okay.
Okay, and of course, we know there are certain parliamentary seats that are yet
Still
to
a
be...
moving target.
Yes. It was, it was 162 against 159. And there are also a number of independent members of parliament. As much as we speak about independence of institutions, there must always be some interdependence, because as much as parliament is independent, sometimes it relies on the executive to also push some of the agendas that they have. And the executive must also rely on parliament so that they can also push the agendas that they also have. And so what is required is objectivity while dealing with most of these affairs. But most importantly, the work of a parliamentarian is to legislate, and to especially legislate the issues that directly affect the person who directly voted for them, that is Wanjiku. So the interest of the common mwananchi, the interest of the voter must come first before you bring in the interest of other forces. And we are hopeful to see them working together, because the executive, of course, requires majority support in parliament. They cannot be able to work without majority support from parliament. And of course, parliament must also, sort of handle these things in a less emotive manner. That is what I would call of them. It's good that Honorable William Ruto said he does not wish to see a handshake, because the role of opposition is cut out for them. Their work is to keep government in check. Their work is to poke holes where they find that things are not going right. And their work is not to always fight government, but they must always show or assist the people in fighting for that which is not going right. It's good that he is advocating for a strong opposition, but at the same time, he must remember of the millions of Kenyans who feel aggrieved, and he must find a way of incorporating them and making them feel that they are part of his government. That way is by ensuring that he brings development to this Wanjiku, that the matters that directly affect these people. We have seen issues of unga subsidy. It's now finished. There is no more unga subsidy. It's now back to 250. We have seen the national debt.
Is that so? I thought I saw a tweet from the Ministry of Agriculture saying that that's not...
I have just seen it here from the Standard, that with the polls done, you can kiss the state subsidies goodbye. That is something that we also expect. So are we going to have subsidies forever? Are Wanjiku going, will they be able to provide for themselves? And will they, thousands, the millions of jobless youths, where will they get their jobs from? All these youths who are jobless are cutting across from both coalitions. They are both from the Kenya Kwanza and they are also from Azimio. So the manner in which he can touch the lives of these people, whether or not they voted for him, is by ensuring that they are economically empowered, by ensuring that development projects touch across board, whether it is in the places that voted or the places that did not vote. In the past, before we had this devolution, before we had especially devolution, we saw that development went only to certain areas and other areas were secluded, especially the areas that did not vote for those leaders at that particular time. We thank God for our constitution because it gives even the counties that lost out, you know, what do we call them? We call them the counties that were sort of segregated in the past. It gives a certain portion for them. While you are apportioning money that will go to the counties, you have to consider what is the poverty index.
Right.
How behind are they in terms of development? But this is not enough.
Okay.
A lot of affirmative action needs to be put in so that most of these counties that have been lagging behind can move a step forward.
Okay.
Most of these counties may not have been voting for the president-elect, but they need that development. The only way to incorporate them is to ensure that they are economically empowered and the development projects touch directly to these particular people.
Kakai, help me here. If Azimio has more members of the National Assembly, do they take the role of leader of majority? And then how does that work with the Kenya Kwanza government in the introduction of government's legislative agenda?
Thanks. That is the position, but I just want to give you a little bit of historical background. This is not the first time we are going to find ourselves in this scenario. And for some reasons, politics has its own way of playing out. Huh? You remember when the NAC government came to power. You remember the Pentagon. We had the Pentagon team had more members of parliament in the National Assembly than the NAC government. It became almost difficult for government to pass any legislative agendas because as a government, you are in power. But that power revolves around parliament. But at the same time, there's that issue of separation of powers. As a head of state, you need certain agendas to pass through. You have Kenyans waiting for you to come up with solutions to their problems, and you've promised them problems through your agenda. How you'll fix it is not their problem. How you'll fix it is how you'll fix it. Now, when I look back, and I want to imagine that the framers of the Constitution, I think they were very wise. They must have thought maybe in future such scenarios will pop up. And what they did is they came up with what we were calling, you don't have to come to parliament or to senate or to become a governor through a political party. You can come in through an independent. So one of the fishing grounds to solve your problem, how they will deal with it, one of the fishing grounds will be independence. Now, you want us to find out, first of all, I don't know the figures, how many, I don't know whether my colleagues know, how many independents came to the National Assembly this time around.
So far, I think, as of yesterday, there were 12.
Now, if you have 12 independents...
But we have 4 constituencies yet to be determined.
Yes.
These by-elections coming.
So assume you have 12 independents. You are the person in charge of the executive. Where will your fishing ground be for you to pass your legislative agenda? I will now rope in the 12 independents to help me push my agenda. Because now we are seeing that KK has less by 3 in the National Assembly. So already politics has its own way of solving problems.
But the question, because if you're an independent and you change your allegiance from being an independent, you risk losing your
independence.
Just hold on. You risk losing your seat because already you're affiliating with another political party. But if Azimio has majority, they produce the majority leader. I thought government business is introduced to the House through the majority leader, unless I'm mistaken. So how do you do that? How do you convince a majority leader who already does not believe in your policies?
As I was saying, once that thing is in Parliament, my brother, there are certain political dynamics that take place, which are beyond our understanding. But at the end of the day, government business will run. Because the president has a chance to know how to deal with those dynamics politically. None of us here is a politician, but as I said, we've been in this scenario before and things were able to be solved.
Right.
So there has to be a way of how he will deal with the parliament that is very divided.
Yeah, but some also, the UDA party, as an individual party, has a majority in parliament. It is the single most party that has the majority of members in parliament. So we will be able to see a majority leader from this particular party, because the Azimio coalition or the Kenya Kwanza coalition did not field candidates through the coalition. They fielded candidates from their individual political parties.
But I thought the law talks about the side with, the political party with the majority or coalition of political parties. In which case then Azimio would have more numbers.
Yes, if that is the case, then it means that we will be able to have a situation that we have not seen in the past. But what we know is that in the past it has been about the single, political parties. The Azimio coalition at the moment already has a majority by 3. And this does not include the 4 constituencies that have not yet cast their vote. Of course, we are bound to see a very interesting
political
future.
balance.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just read the law. I know you want to respond. Article 108 of the Constitution, party leaders. There shall be a leader of the majority party and a leader of the minority party. The leader of the majority party shall be the person who is the leader in the National Assembly of the largest party or coalition of parties. So I think that would resolve such a situation. I know, yes, there's still some 4 constituencies that are yet to vote for who will be the member of National Assembly. But, Irungu, if the situation was to remain as it is, then how does Kenya Kwanza push its agenda through Parliament?
So I think, Kakai is talking a little bit about I guess what you call real politic, right? Yes. So when you're in the Parliament, there are a number of deals and trade-offs that happen. And of course, that stuff is very exciting. It is, of course, the lifeblood of our politicians, those moments in the coffee bar and the bar. But I think the thing I wanted to raise was really that there is a beauty in having independence. These 12 independents have run against, in some cases, 1 or 2 very large political alliances, and they have won. And I think what they have to safeguard is that independence. Otherwise, they lose the power of their view. 12 of them is sufficient to essentially, well, depending on what happens with the 4 constituencies, but still I think 12 will be a sufficient number to be able to force a vote if they are unified in the way that they operate. So I think they have to avoid the 2 big sharks, if I can be a bit impolite to the 2 alliances, and continue to articulate themselves independently, issue by issue, based on what is good for the country. I mean, I think that's what I would, kind of hold out, that these independents, some of whom are, are veteran politicians, that they use those positions not essentially as chips to any particular political alliance, but that they retain a sense of focus in the interests of the country. That would be the beauty of the independence at this point, not that they collapse into either the ruling, the majority party or the minority party.
Okay, very interesting. Carol, you're back now, and as we continue this conversation, again, I know this is not your forte in your daily dealings, but having seen what a parliament was, the 12th parliament, especially towards after 2018, how would you suggest that they deal, because you didn't finish with your response earlier on, how would you suggest they deal with the business of parliament versus the executive, knowing the separation of powers, and sometimes you, as the people in the business world, you go to lobby parliamentarians? Carol, we can't hear you. You mind unmuting your sound? Carol, I can't hear you. Carol, I think your laptop might be on mute. We'll take a short break here so that we also help you to correct that. We're back shortly with the panelists here in studio, as well as Carol Kariuki from KEPSA. Stay tuned.
It's the Wild Wild West. Looking for a place where music meets, a place where energy congregates. Where all the stars in Kenya align, and where Africa and the world reunite. Look no further. 10 over 10 every Friday at 10 p.m. With the wild, wild Willis Raburu. We are the definition of lit. Jaja, you put the jaja.
It's the kind of magic. Magic.
Aren't you excited for the Champions League, Europa, FA Cup?
Gee, every moment from the Premier League, every.
Don't forget local, the Ethiopian and Zambian leagues, and the FIFA World Cup.
You know what they should call it though? I've got it. Football's greatest season.
Get DSTV so you can drink from every cup that matters in football's greatest season. Only on SuperSport.
Previously on Tahiti High.
Maya, you've not handed in your assignment.
Because I haven't done it.
Do not come back to class. From now on, be working from home. Many people are doing that these days.
You did what?
Tahiti High, Tuesdays at 6:30 p.m.
Ee Mungu, nguvu yetu, ilete baraka kwetu. Haki iwe ngao na mlinzi, na tukae na undugu, amani na uhuru. Raha tupate na ustawi, tuungane mkono kwa upendo, tuwe jirani wema kwa kusaidiana na kuelewana.
Dial *860*412# to get tuungane mkono.
There will be those of us who will be in the executive, but there will be those of us who will oversee what we do in the executive. Both responsibilities in government and in the opposition are important for the people of Kenya. I want to promise the people of Kenya that I will run a transparent, open, democratic government. And I will work with the opposition to the extent that they provide oversight over my administration.
All right, that is William Ruto, President-elect, speaking about what he thinks should be the role of Parliament versus the role of the executive. And Carol from KEPSA is now back. We hope that we will succeed in this. And Carol, I had asked you the question about having Parliament go through an agenda, of course, knowing the challenge they might find. Of course, it appears like so far, Azimio la Umoja has slightly more numbers than Kenya Kwanza. So how do you suggest they go about their business of oversighting the government, but also listening to different communities of interest, including the business sector?
Thank you very much. I think we'll stay off the video so that I can hear you. The business of the day and what we have seen, even when, and we've been working with Parliament, we have a very structured engagement, just the same way we have a structured engagement with the executive. We have a very structured engagement with Parliament through the committees and then the full assembly every end of the year. And for what we've seen how they work, they find ways to lobby each other to rally around a business. We've seen the executive. We've seen the executive try and lobby through their business to be able to pass an agenda. But we also, as business community, we engage them on a structured engagement. And so while every government and would want to have majority in Parliament to make it easier, it's still possible to still do the business of the day, as long, especially if you're focusing on something that concerns the public, the stakeholders, then the affiliations don't really matter in that sense. But even to mention of what I'd had one of the speakers saying in terms of the independent candidates, what we saw with what we have seen with a lot of the independent candidates of the 12, many of them are aligned to one side or another. So they're independent in the sense that they're not running in one of the party, but they're supporting maybe the presidential candidate of one of the alliances. So I think it will be now behest of the executive to be able to lobby some the people, the independents who are kind of aligned to themselves, so that they're able to have majority. But I think for us, what we'll do, we'll continue to engage them from that structural engagement where we have those regular engagements with them, and so it will make it easier for our business of the day to go. And especially as long as we have the same, we've agreed on the business to work with the government. We usually develop what we call the national business agenda, where we engage the government, the administration of the day, and say this is the agenda for us from the business community for the next 5 years. It incorporates the business aspirations. It includes the Vision 2030. It includes things like SDG. And once that is adopted, then that becomes an engagement framework with the executive, with Parliament, with Senate, and also with the judiciary. And so that's how we'll continue to engage. So our engagement is not ad hoc. So it is not so hard for us to engage across the divide, because we have a structured engagement and we use a document to engage Parliament.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Carol, for that. And Kakai, even as we reflect on this, because in the 12th Parliament and also the 11th Parliament, we learned a lot, because it appears the need of parliamentary groups. In the 11th Parliament, there was a bit of that. In the 12th Parliament, actually, part of the reason that Jubilee Party collapsed was because there was less negotiations on what is going ahead in Parliament. But how? Because Deputy President is on record promising that they'll have enough consultations with the party. But how do we shield Parliament from the very strong arm of the executive in execution of its work, so that it remains true to the people, because they are the representatives of the people, not the president?
You know, that speaks to what we call in law the checks and balance. You see, there's three. Let's limit ourselves to the two arms of government. Talk of the executive and the legislature. When students are being taught, you are saying that these two must have checks and balance, and these two must ensure that there's synergy of operation. Now, anybody who went to that parliament had their own investment and their own agenda for their people. So you are there as a member of parliament, and you have a specific agenda of what you want to achieve in terms of those people who elected you. So that business that which cuts across the board, that is beneficial for the citizenry, I never see a problem with that. I never see. We should never worry about that, because they will always know that this is the thing that we need to support, because it's for the interest of the Kenyan people. You are not there for your own. You are there because the voter took you there. So the dynamics, and I will repeat, the dynamics of how government affairs will be played out is a political thing. The politics has its own way of reshaping there. And we even spoke about the role of independence and how we have to be protected, their role under the Constitution. But when they are there, that independent is aligned to somebody. Because he went to vote, isn't it? He voted for himself, but he must have voted for a president. And one of the presidents is leading the executive, so he's aligned towards that. So the dynamics of how that house will play, remember that there has to be separation of power, there have to be interdependent with one another, but synergy as well.
Right.
But what we should guard against is executive overwhelming Parliament's role. And I think there are many decisions that have been channeled out in the institutions, in the courts, where it has clarified the role of Parliament, the role of the executive, and of course the role of the judiciary separately. But on these issues, in fact, judiciary doesn't come in because that one is separate on its own. So the dynamics there is very interesting.
Right. Irungu, what then must these new parliamentarians do?
So let me just reiterate a point. I think it's really important that independents do not see themselves as, or we do not see independents as displaced persons for hire by the executive or by the minority within parliament. It is not in Kenyans' interest, I don't think. It is in our interest to keep them focused on issues that affect Kenyans broadly, and for them to use their bargaining chip of 12 in parliament so far. And again, we're waiting for the 4 constituencies to finalize on the 23rd. But we need to keep them focused on the bigger picture, and they will have much more power that way, rather than essentially being used, by the big political parties. I think the other thing that we have to keep in our minds is really this phrase by the president-elect that I will run an open democratic government. Now, there are a number of Kenyans that don't believe him, right, to be frank. I won't go into why they don't believe him. It's probably not important. The point is, I think, for the Kenya Kwanza Alliance is for them to demonstrate the degree of openness, the degree of democracy, the degree of responsiveness to human rights compliance, the degree of fidelity to the Constitution. I think that's what will dispel some of these, kind of concerns that are out there. And, I think words, they sometimes say words are cheap. I don't believe so. I think words are important because they signal an intention and they create the conditions for accountability. If you do not speak, nobody can hold you accountable. Once you speak, people can say, let us look at your behavior in the context of your words. So I think we need to be watching this moment very clearly. I think the last thing to mention is that although we have focused very much in this show on the presidential race, we have, of course, the National Assembly, but we also have the county governments as well. And what's interesting there is that we have almost the same level of closeness in terms of the numbers. By, I guess, the records that I had was something like 22-21. I mean, that's going to be a really interesting council of governors. And of course, they have common interest. The interest will be to make sure that they are able to close the loopholes. And I speak to the greatness of the county government governors. I was having a conversation with Transparency International about 3 to 4 days ago, and I asked them whether they were going to declare some of the counties as corruption hotspots for us to watch over the next few months. But let's speak to the greatness of the people who have been elected. For them, they have to find ways of sealing the loopholes, making sure that all the income, the revenue that comes into the county assemblies is banked properly. They need to deal with the wastage and the mismanagement that has been there. And thirdly, also they will have to deal with issues like, for example, recurrent expenditure over development expenditure, because ultimately Kenyans voted for county governments not as employment machines, but as service providing machines. And I think that's going to be the challenge over the coming months. And I guess to those of us who are in Nairobi, to our incoming governor, really for him to quickly bring the services back into the county of Nairobi and close down the Nairobi Metropolitan Services, as was his campaign pledge, and as quickly as possible to bring development and a focus that is both consistent in terms of services, but also in terms of Nairobi being one of the counties under devolution. The last comment really relates to the by-elections. And of course, we've not talked about this, but Mombasa and Kakamega are going to have their gubernatorial races in a few days' time. And there are a number of things that are not clear yet. For example, will Mombasa and Kakamega have a special public holiday for the day that they are going to the polls? Mm-hmm. They will be voting in schools. Does that mean that schools across Mombasa and Kakamega will be closed not just for the polling day, but for the 2 or 3 days that it will take to tally as well?
Is it possible to have a special public holiday in just 1 or 2 counties?
I don't know. But I mean, during the curfew and during the pandemic, we were able to close down certain counties and leave other counties operating. I leave that one to the lawyers and to the transitional
government. Curfew is not public holidays.
I tell you. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, the question is, if we don't see a public holiday, you're really going to put the good people of Mombasa and Kakamega in a difficult position, right? Do they go to work? Do they look for the shilling? Or do they go vote for their county governor? So I think these are things that need to be announced very clearly. And I think the Ministry of Education has to be consulted by the IEBC this time round so that they are clear that polling stations will be available. Otherwise, we'll have voters queuing next to students just outside the classrooms.
Okay, Irungu. Now,
I can't put it more vividly than that,
You mentioned something that is interesting. That is about that counties are not employment machines. They're just about delivery of services. But Wambui, let's talk about transition. Now, there will be a new president, and that president will be William Ruto, unless that is challenged successfully at the Supreme Court. And if nothing happens, then that should be at the end of this month, 30th of August. From your experience as an observer, but also as a participant in governance, because you are the helm of the NCAC, what sort of changes should you expect in terms of this transition, especially in the composition of state and public institutions?
Yeah, I think I'm sort of excited, especially because I have seen young people rise in the hands of the president-elect. He has a history of, uplifting these very young people, making them members of parliament, or sort of assisting them and supporting them to be members of parliament. We have also seen part of his appointments that he has done in the past, in the previous administration or in the current administration, has really focused on the young people. So I'm sort of excited for the young people. I expect a transition that will also focus on the young people, uplift the young people, give them proper jobs, uplift the Mama Mboga as he promised in the campaign, and have a way of incorporating all these people who have always felt that they are not part of the executive, sort of incorporate them in that. For the transition, of course, there are those who will be exiting because, this is now a new government that must also be given the space to work as a new government. What we need to see is fresh blood, aggressive people, people who are, focused on steering the country forward. And of course, not forgetting the good work that has already been done by those who are currently in those positions, because we wouldn't say that no work has been done. A lot has been done in this country for the past 5, 10 years, 20 years or so. And of course, you cannot forget about them. But transitions must happen. And they must happen for the good of the country. So I'm just positive that it will be, it's time for, fresh blood in these positions.
Let's speak to Carol from KEPSA, because Carol, obviously, well, I'm told that we no longer have Carol for the moment. If we get to reconnect with her, we'll speak to her. But
let me chip in just to build on what you're saying.
Yes, but let me reframe it, because we know for sure the new president must get principal secretaries, cabinet secretaries. There may be change of guard in parastatals, whether it's the board members or the chairpersons. There could be new high commissioners and ambassadors. And several times we've seen politicians who've lost elections getting back to some of these positions, especially CSs and high commissioners, not so much with PSs, I don't know why. But what should we see this time so that we also focus on merit, not just about loyalty, political loyalty?
We've seen transitions for some time. If you begin by the late president, when he left power, we saw what mechanisms of transitions took place. When you saw Mr. Kibaki leaving office, we saw the transition. Now, what are we expecting here? Going by the speech that he gave, he said that he wants to make this country inclusive. So there will be a whitewash. In terms of parastatals, remember that most of the parastatals that are right now in this country already have appointees who are appointed by His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta. Those are appointees that have been gazetted. Nothing stops him from degazetting them. That's one thing you should know. They are there by virtue of a gazette notice. That gazette notice puts you there, it can be degazetted. So the first thing is you remove whoever you think you want to remove, because this is your government. You want to work with the people who supported you, right? It's politics. And you also want to work with people who are competent. At the same time, you want to work with the people put in those offices representing the face of Kenya. The third thing will be the issues of ambassadors. Any new state, any new government that comes in recalls all those ambassadors. Nothing stops His Excellency to do what? To recall those ambassadors and reshape the foreign missions and all that. You come to CSS, the first task you'll have after the Assumption of Office Committee now briefs him and gives him the mandate to go on, and the petitions probably are complete and now he's in office, he will remodel the cabinet secretaries. Ministries are not cast. The number of ministers are in the Constitution, but how you name it or call it is not in the Constitution. So you can rename it. For example, I wish to see the recoming of the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. You remember during our time, we worked very well with that ministry. We want to see this ministry is coming up again. So he will remodel those ministries.
The AG's office has not filled that gap.
Well, that's a debate for another day, but that was a very powerful ministry that, in my view, it's a ministry that His Excellency should consider bringing it back in terms of a full-fledged ministry. So we see these ministers will be, but remember when he's appointing these cabinet secretaries and ministers, will be the face of Kenya, the way he promised. Permanent secretaries. Then also these top positions that are all in Kenya will be reshaped. So what we expect, therefore, in terms of realignments will be done, and anybody who has been appointed in this position, they know very well that Attorney General, the office of the Attorney General, by the way, is one of the positions that you serve at the pleasure of the President. And therefore, the President, when he exits, then you also to exit, and a new Attorney General comes in. We'll have to see a new Solicitor General coming in. So the whole structure, governance structure, in terms of supporting the executive, is going to change.
Maybe I can jump in on some on that one. I mean, I think, just if we go back to kind of what this election has taught us, 4 million upwards did not bother to collect voters' cards. 7 million did not bother to get out of bed and or did other things on the day of the poll. That's probably around kind of 11 million people. What that tells me, and I don't know whether it's the same for others, but what it tells me is that there are a lot of people of adult age and our voters who no longer feel inspired by the political processes, right? And I think what the greatest danger for Kenya Kwanza at this point would be to go into business as usual, to essentially continue with the different strategies that have been used by the Jubilee administration up to now. And they ran a platform like Azimio on freedom is coming. There is a new change. And I really ask Kenyans to remember these things, because we have to hold the new government to that declaration, because that's the declaration that got them the votes that they received in this election. Business as usual will take us back to the kind of apathy that we have seen among Kenyans. So there are two things that Kenya Kwanza should not do right now. The first is recycle politicians that have been displaced by opponents at the polls. The second is not use our parastatals and our ministries as landing grounds for patron-client relationships, people who are favorites, relatives, former relatives, slightly distant relatives. Really think about, how do you use these forums? Because each of these parastatals and ministries, they really matter for millions of Kenyans. And then the last one is really avoid the opportunity to use these public institutions as opportunities for private interests. And I think this is where the leadership, the leadership and integrity clause in our Constitution, Chapter 6, has to be another lens by which we view the appointments that Kenya Kwanza will make in the next few months or so. I think the other one is to just say this, and Kekai would probably agree with me this one, is that, power is, politicians concentrate power, yes, right? They also exercise power, and they have tremendous power over millions of people's lives. The question is whether they use it in a just manner, whether they use it for the interests of the public, or whether they use it really to consolidate resources and power and privilege for a very small number of people. And again, that number of 11 million people have clearly said that they were dissatisfied with the exercise of power and the distribution of resources prior to the elections. And I think those group of people will only grow if we see in the next tenure of this administration and the 47 county administrations a continuation of the past.
Very interesting. I want us to cross over to